Hey, what's up, everybody? It's LeeLos, and today we're talking about the legendary greatness of Spider-Man. And guys, stay steady in the pursuit of your dreams and goals. You're born to win, and we definitely believe in you guys. Keep up the great work each and every day. So, Mr. Castle, say hello to these nice fellas.
Fellas, what is up? What is up? Thank you for having me on, Mr. 5 Mil.
Thank you for being on, Mr. Castle. And yes, today we're talking about the legendary Spidey. What are some things that come to mind when you think about Spider-Man just being awesome?
That is a fantastic question. What I think about with Spider-Man is truly the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. As in, I believe everybody is just like Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is just like everybody. He's probably the most related superhero that we can all relate to. And the greatness of Spider-Man is he's just a normal guy having the same types of trials and tribulations as all of us. As if we're talking about business and the business boys, I believe he has those responsibilities. And the famous line, with great power comes great responsibility. If we have the capacity to create and give back, we do have that responsibility. So I really do draw a lot of strength from understanding what Spider-Man has to go through, especially from the movies. Some of the comics I actually collected growing up, like the Ultimate Spider-Man series and the games, and I just understood that, let alone he has like perfect balance and perfect strength, incredibly agile. Any type of situation. There's this shot from Spider-Man 2 when he's fighting Doc Ock on the train, and he just like flies through a bridge like it's nothing. And he also flies through a semi-truck like it's nothing. So it's like he has all of this power, all of the Spidey sense, and at the same time he still has all of those real world stuff that he has to deal with, like apartment and the rent. And like, where's rent? And he still has to deliver pizzas and go to school. So I think he's just a fantastic character because he represents the common man. What about you?
I completely agree with that. Like, a lot of the times especially if I play a Spider-Man video game, a lot of times I just pretend I'm actually Spider-Man. He's a very relatable superhero, like you're saying, like, especially if you're a young adult, because most Spider-Mans, they're typically in the age range of, well, they're in their 20s somewhere, or if it's a younger Spider-Man, he's still in high school, so he'll be like 16, 17. But either way, a lot of relatable stuff is there. Like, did you get to see the Spider-Man with Miles Morales, that movie? Into the Spider-Verse, I think it was called? That movie?
Yeah.
So when I first saw it, I was 23, but it was so inspiring to me because there was little messages throughout all of it, like how Miles is like a normal guy, but he has a lot of potential to do great things in the world. And that goes beyond him being Spider-Man. It's like him as a person can do great things for the world. And you can take that message in yourself and be like, wow, you know what? I can do good things too, That's a feeling that I get whenever I watch Spider-Man, read Spider-Man, or play games of Spider-Man. Do you have any like favorite Spider-Man games or like favorite Spider-Man movies?
Yeah, so subsequently, actually, it's both the Spider-Man 2 movie and the Spider-Man 2 video game on the GameCube. Oh. And I grew up on the Spider-Man 2 game on the GameCube. And the only reason is because, looking back with hindsight, I love what you mentioned about Miles Morales. It's truly about belief. Because Spider-Man 2 is about him changing his reason to be Spider-Man. Because in the first movie, he talks about, well, he has to avenge his uncle. And he became Spider-Man kind of in like a more ruthless way. He's way more like a vigilante in a sense in the first movie, but then now in the second movie he actually is like, I don't know if I can handle my life, and I love Mary Jane, but she can't. No one else can know who I am, and then they can't take the people who I love very much, so I have to I cannot commit to this relationship, and I also can't risk telling people who I am, and at the same time still has to go to school, pay rent, go to work. So I mean ultimately he loses his powers in those movies, and then he finds his power back because he chooses to do it for a different reason rather than something less powerful. Like, something negative is very powerful, it's still pretty powerful, but something more in a higher ideal, like how we talked about in Batman. He commits himself to a higher ideal, and in Spider-Man 2, all in the same movie, and he still comes out on top, and he still is able to essentially handle his relationship with Mary Jane. But yeah, the video game is also quite inspiring too. I think that also revolutionized game mechanics and swinging. And that's a completely different topic about technology. But yeah, that movie Spider-Man 2 really inspired a whole lot of different industries and just mindset.
In the Spider-Man 2 game, isn't that the one where you have to deliver pizzas, and if you do too many front flips, the pizzas just get turned into sauce, nothing but sauce, and then it just ruins?
Yeah. Yes, you can't be tricking that much with the stack of pizzas in that game. Otherwise, you fail the mission.
That was classic.
Definitely. Even in addition to what you shared about the Spider-Man game, PS4 game, that physique is just very inspiring. Like how they crafted, and the artist did very well with that physique as well. But I agree with you. Like in the comics, Spider-Man is not only agile, and I found myself very inspired to just also stretch, and like seeing how empowering stretching and yoga is. I think you shared with me in a past conversation where someone was doing yoga, and he's just like in his 80s, well into his 80s or 90s now, and he's like, oh yeah, all I did was did yoga. And that inspired me too. I'm sure you have more information on that and more insight. But in addition to agility, I've learned a lot from Spider-Man and how he also can like handle like 100x his body weight. I think that's like the number. Maybe I'm over exaggerating, but just like how a spider can do that, he can maximize. When he got bit by the spider, essentially he got the same power as a spider does. He can handle, or the spider can handle 10x, 3x, or 10x, or 100x as their body weight. And Spider-Man can handle like a train and stuff like that, and stop a car at like 100 miles an hour, and like, or stop the Winter Soldier's arm in like full force. And he's like, whoa, you got a middle arm? Like, I think that's quite like amazing. Like you stopping a punch of Mike Tyson times 10, imagine, and he's like catching it like a baseball. So I think that's also really inspiring for me to just go and put myself in those situations at the gym, for example, and know it's all about the human body can heal itself, and the more that we can handle more stress in the physical, the more we can essentially grow and become more like Spider-Man.
That is super cool. And what it makes me think is like Spider-Man's definitely a huge inspiration for parkour calisthenic guys, because it's like that's pretty much who he is to the extreme, just a super parkour specialist with incredible calisthenic like strength. Because like calisthenics, you get really physically strong, but it typically doesn't look like humongous muscle. So if you see a guy who's really good at calisthenics with like a long sleeve shirt on, you might think that they're just like kind of weak and not that strong, but then they can just bust out like 100 handstand push-ups and with no effort. And then, but Spider-Man's kind of like that same way, where you look at him and he's not like humongous, big, bulking, jacked like Batman is or Superman is. But then he can like sometimes when I see him do strength feats, it surprises me because I forget how strong he is. Like he can just like effortlessly pick up a car and stuff like that. And I don't know if you ever played this. There's this one PS2 game called Marvel Nemesis. You just played as different Marvel characters, and like certain characters were strong enough to pick up cars and trucks, and other characters, like if you were Wolverine, you tried to pick up a car, he just couldn't do it. But Spider-Man could just punch a car, it goes flying. And like that was a game that made me really realize how strong Spider-Man is. But he has a lot of strength feats in the movies too. You were talking about yoga. Spider-Man makes me think of the Gracie family. I was talking to you about the Gracies, Hicks and Gracie, how he's such a legend. Yeah. Because Hicks and Gracie, in his documentary Choke, he talks about how he constantly works on maximizing his flexibility and his mobility and his power at all times. So he's kind of like a real life Spider-Man in terms of like physical abilities, because he was super strong. He was like almost 190, I think 5'10", buff, like very low body fat, could do a full splits well into his 40s. He's just an incredible guy. And even today, he's still like in great shape. But I think like a body type like that, you can achieve a body type like that if you're inspired by Spider-Man. Obviously, you can do it if you're not inspired by Spider-Man, but that's like an example, not the only example, just one. Yeah, that was everything I wanted to share. Is there anything else you wanted to share, Mr. Castle?
In terms of Spider-Man, he definitely, again, with like that great power comes great responsibility. That's very inspiring, especially if he has all the physical strength in the world that we would ever desire, more than enough, than physical strength. Spider-Man is a really great opportunity to understand what humility is as well in those areas of life. Even just like, you're right, you're talking about Tobey Maguire. He's just probably the one guy in the one Spider-Man variants where he's just, yep, this is what's happening right now. Yep, sorry, Mr. Dickovich, I don't have the rent. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna have to go deliver some pizzas. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, when you have the power, you have to find ways to make it right in areas. So I think that was a really great learning for me. Back to you, Mr. 5 Mil.
Thank you, sir. And yeah, and I also think Spider-Man, he has some of the like most fun to have powers that a person could have. Like, it would be so cool to be able to web swing. Well, honestly, doing web swinging in real life, I feel like I'd be very terrified of just like, what if I just miss a building, or what if I shoot too much web and I go too far to the ground and just like scrape my knees on the ground at like 100 miles an hour, or like it's like so many things like that. Unless your spidey senses just make it so that you know exactly how much web to shoot out, and then also like having that much physical strength, I feel like practically you would end up breaking a lot of household items just trying to do them normally. Like if I try and open the door, I just rip the door handle off, like, oh darn, it happened again. And just stuff like that. So I don't know, but overall his powers are really cool. That was everything we wanted to say today, guys. What do you think about Spider-Man? What do you think about the Spider-Man video games, the PS4, the PS5 video games? They're all really cool. Let us know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and you have a great rest of your day.